Hi everyone, welcome back to the Art of Business English, where we help you get the skills that you need to succeed in business at the highest levels in English speaking environments. Welcome Loic, how are you, my friend?
Thanks, man. I'm good. Yeah, no complaints this side.
Excellent. So this week we are going to wrap things up in the second part of our series on teaching online, and today's episode is entitled Adapting to Teaching Online. So we're going to be focusing on or outlining all the things that you need to consider when you want to adapt to this new, bold new world that is online teaching. So we're going to look at a few things. Basically, we'll be looking at digital tools that have become more really important to use, to learn, to understand. We'll be looking at Neophobia and Technophobia. What else we got here? Juggling personal life with work, which is both an online and offline problem. We'll also be looking at issues related to students refusing to really want to learn online. And we'll also look at how one-to-one or teaching online can be quite demanding on your attention, technical barriers for teachers, and finally, planning from the student's perspective. So, Loic, my friend, what about the tools? What's this post-COVID world?
Yeah.
Let's look at the background. We are now in a position where most countries have been forced to move online, and schools, just like even your regular school with your kids. Like my kids are, when they're in confinement, or if they are confined again, well, moving back online. Actually, that was actually the motivation for me creating this course, because I saw the teachers at my daughter's school struggling teaching online. So I was a bit like, okay, what can I do? And I've actually given the director of the school access to the course because, I thought they would benefit from it. Post-COVID world, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that it's the virus, that is, it's changed a lot. I think the methods, the disciplines, the content has had to change, and it was very, very much along the same lines for a long time. And it's had to change now, probably forever. I wouldn't say the class, and we've spoken about this, the classroom hasn't gone, but it's been joined. It's been joined by this new format, this new online teaching, which has got teachers, a lot of them, not familiar with what it takes to actually teach online. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that some of the tools, the tools have changed. The tools have changed.
Yeah, they have a lot. And I going back to what you said, yes, most teachers from what I've seen, traditional teachers, we're talking about like school teachers, they have received no training online, like they were just thrust into the online world. Yeah. And it's been quite a challenge for a lot of people, especially if you're a traditional teacher, you've been working in a school for 15, 20 years or most of your working life, and suddenly you've been forced to teach online and make transition with little or no training. It's been quite disastrous in many cases. People have really struggled. Students haven't received the education that they deserve, and particularly here, lots of parents have been very angry at what they've seen, what they've experienced. And it's the first time in the history of humanity that parents are actually in the classroom, literally, like they're looking over they're looking over their child's shoulder at what's happening and just going, "What is this? This is not education." So that's what I've noticed, and that's one of the main reasons why I was motivated to develop this course. So let's look at the tools then. You mentioned the tools earlier. What do teachers, if we're adapting to teaching online, what type of things do we need to adapt to? What tools should we be looking at?
And a lot of the tools are already there. If I think of it, what teachers had to do very quickly is they had to bolt on to their existing methodology things like WhatsApp. Now you take WhatsApp, which has evolved also very quickly. It's relatively new on the scene, In terms of internet, of course, things move very fast, so it's not that new. But simple things like sending voice messages to the teacher and receiving feedback via WhatsApp. That is something which would have been unheard of. The direct access to a student outside of the classroom would be unheard of, and teachers have had to get their heads around that. So you've got YouTube videos, you've got YouTube channels, private channels, in order to reach out to your audience. You've got live sessions, you've got Zoom Live, you've got YouTube Live. These are all technologies where teachers have had to adjust to where to press buttons. They didn't have to press buttons. They had chalk, maybe they had a marker, they could go to a board, they could make changes, they could wipe things out. Today, you've somehow, with your hands, got to make things happen on a keyboard and on a trackpad. So some of the tools, and you've probably got some in your course, to me, you've got things like Skype, Zoom, you've got proprietary formats and platforms online, and you've got to somehow connect with your students that way, which is to say nothing of mobile formats like Skype. I mean, you can run your entire class on Skype on a mobile phone, Now, for a traditional teacher, that's it's hard to get your head around.
It is hard to get your head around. And I mean, on your mobile, you're a bit limited in terms of what you can share and what students can see. But it is possible to run specific classes in terms of mainly conversation or role-playing classes on a Skype call on your mobile phone. But there are so many tools, and that's what I think online teachers need to be aware of. And my advice is to be aware of all of the collaborative tools, because that's what's going to make your class a really enriched or dynamic learning experience. And simple things like the Google Suite, Google Docs. That's just like, oh yeah, Google Docs. But you can collaborate on Google Docs. You can have people working on the same doc at the same time. So you've got people in different remote locations, and they're collaborating, they're working together. So that's my first advice. If you want to adapt to teaching online, you need to be aware of all of the tools for collaboration, and there are a lot, and there are more and more every day. And you also need to be aware of how you can somehow centralize, especially if you're working with more than, if you're doing like one-to-one language lessons with people, then it's quite simple. But if you've got classrooms of like 15, 20 people, big classes of big language learning groups, then you need to have some centralized platform. So you're going to have to be aware of where and how you can centralize data or make it easily accessible, so that people don't have to, you don't have to send out 101 million emails. Email is still effective. It's a great way to communicate with your students. However, as we need to distribute larger and larger files, more video than in the past, you'll need to have a centralized location. So hosting, centralizing data, and collaborative tools for me would be the big ones. Yeah. Would you like to add anything before we move on, buddy?
No, I think, maybe we can touch on that neophobia in a moment, because I think that's something that is a relatively new word which is going to be thrown around. I haven't heard it too much, but basically the fear of new things. And strangely enough, it's accompanied in the online teaching world, to me, especially for individual online teachers, so those are not connected to a school necessarily, is the counter to that, which is the shiny new objects syndrome.
I love that one. That's my problem. I have the shiny new object syndrome. Like, I'll try this, I'll try that. This I love this new piece of technology. It's I suck. You can really go down a rabbit hole with new technology and shiny round objects. But neophobia. Yeah, I mean, people, particularly depending on their age. I mean, I don't want to sound discriminatory towards people who are a bit older, because for example, if we take my mother or my mother-in-law, they're in their 70s and they embrace new technologies. So it's not really like that age specific, but yeah, there is a barrier for older people. They are maybe resistant to change. They don't want to adopt these new technologies or use these new digital tools to learn, because quite frankly, it's too hard for them, or they just you don't see the point. So that can be another challenge. So Neophobia is when you're resistant to new change. What about technophobia? That's a common, and that's not necessarily age restricted or related to age either. Yeah.
No, it's not. And I think of technophobia, which is kind of the fear of technology, essentially. And if you think about it, technology means glitches. It means you have to learn to adapt. It means, what does it mean? Basically, small things. We're having a connection, suddenly the video cuts out. And I'm not talking about you and I. I'm saying to a paying client, that is stress. You can't blame it on the school. There is no school. Basically, you've added or you've substituted a classroom learning environment and you wish you could reach out to the student, but the camera is not working or the sound cuts out. And how do you remain calm under those circumstances? It's a lot of pressure. It can be a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it can be a lot of pressure. So again, that comes back to your planning and having an experience, having faced these technical issues and knowing what you should do, or having already spoken about what your students should do in case something like that happens. So that's where WhatsApp and that's where the tools can come into handy. So like when there is a drop in your internet connection or whatever, you can actually quickly make a WhatsApp call, because WhatsApp calls are not restricted to, you're not paying for an international call, you're just using a voice over IP call, which is free, or it's based on your 4G or your 3G, so which is great. So there are ways to get around that. But yeah, technophobia, I've got some colleagues, some of my teachers, one of them, she's quite young, she's in her 20s or late 20s, early 30s. And she says, I just don't do technology. And it's a bit infuriating for me. But in the end, she's adapted because we were forced to teach online due to being in confinement. And in the end, people can overcome that. But they need to be trained, and they need to be, you need to hold their hand through the process, because for some people, it's a bit scary. Some people don't like technology. Some people are just happy keeping things simple. And that's the way it is. All right, what about one of the other challenges, which is, you're often, if you're teaching online, you're actually teaching from home, aren't you, Loic? You're at your house. So that can lead to some problems with your family life. Now, what are some of the challenges there if you're adapting to online?
Oh yeah, so work-life balance. Teaching in a school means you're out of the house, you're traveling to a destination, and there you are doing your thing. Now suddenly you're doing your thing right here, which has its advantages. It means there is no commute, but it also means that you may have children running around. Right?
Yeah, that's happened to me a lot. Yeah, hi, Dad, not now. Yeah.
Exactly. So you've got literally challenges in that area, and you've got to stop and eat, for example, and yet you've scheduled a call, because who thought about lunch? Suddenly that's irrelevant. Your students come first, except they're coming into your house.
Yeah, and you maybe have the tendency to work too much and fail to make, draw a line between your work life and your personal life. So those are some challenges. So when you are adapting to your online teaching life, you need to be quite disciplined with it and have a schedule that you've created for yourself, and you stick to that schedule. And this is a big challenge. This is not related to language teaching, but this is a big challenge. A lot of my students who are adults and have families and are working, a lot of them are still working from home because the company's like, no, we're happy with you working from home, and they're actually experiencing an invasion of their personal life now. They feel that they're always working, they feel that they're always on call, they feel like they're always accessible, and that their bosses have or their colleagues fail to respect their private time or their personal life. And this is a big challenge, and I think there are going to be some really great courses. So if you want to become a coach or a teacher, you understand, about teaching, about this work-life balance, or you've got some techniques, there will be some great courses that you could sell to companies, teaching managers and people in departments about how they are to behave now that we're working online, there should be some sort of, I don't know, methodology or a system or some very clear rules about what it means to be working from home and what it means to be in the office. Otherwise, people will just be working 24 hours a day. Okay. Have you got anything about work-life balance? Any other challenges for you?
Hey, look, Andrew, teachers are superhumans. We know this. They've always been superhuman.
Yes.
So,
and very patient.
And we're patient.
Patient with our students,
what happens
not
is,
with our families.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an intrusion which we more than tolerate. We welcome this intrusion. Mm-hmm. And it does put you under pressure. And the funny thing is, which is counterintuitive, mental and physical stamina is getting tested. And so what happens is that there is an opportunity here, and maybe you address it in your courses, that mental preparedness is so important. Because if you knew what was coming at you, you'd be already halfway there. I think for a lot of the teachers, they don't know what's about to happen. And so they don't realize that students booking back-to-back lessons, for example, so calendar management becomes an issue. Stopping for a break in between lessons. I've had that myself. When I started, it was back-to-back, man. It was lesson, and 5 minutes later, it would be the start of the next lesson, which is not optimal for the finish of the first lesson because you're cutting off your students potentially. You know, they're trying to finish something and you literally cannot afford to let them do that because your next class is starting. So, no, I wouldn't even say tips and tricks. I would say structure. I would say letting your students, your teachers to be, have specific tools and knowledge on how to manage themselves going forward as they get into this new online space. Okay, so it's not for everyone, but no, everyone should have that as part of their repertoire.
Good advice. Yeah, that is great advice. I agree completely because I found the same. I was working like 5 hours straight some days in quarantine, and it is a real challenge because you need to maintain your focus. You need to motivate students. You need to be bubbly and try and make the class as fun as possible. And it gets really tiring. And the fact that you are surrounded by screens, there is a certain level of like light and radiation coming off them. It can drain you both physically and mentally. Yeah, so that's good advice. Be prepared. Make sure you don't book your classes too close together. But one of the advantages of working online is that you can control your own schedule. So you should try and do that. Another problem that we face is like some people, and this is, if someone's coming to you for one-to-one lessons online, they're happy for it. Happy to do it. However, some people don't want to do online, and a lot of my students who were forced to go online have told me they prefer to come in person, which is quite interesting because a lot of them, I thought being, late teens, early 20s, they're the digital natives. I thought they'd love it, but no, they're like, no, I really want contact with people. I want to feel the presence of my teacher and my classmates. So online is not going to be for everyone. So there's going to be a place for all, all learning environments, like both online and offline, I think. So what about how we just touched on this, one-to-one can be quite demanding on your attention. How can you switch off, or if you can't switch off? So how can you stay focused if you're doing one-to-one lessons, Loic?
To me, variety is probably one of the best tools that you have. Honestly, when I think of it, I think switching it up, bringing it back down, having a variety of different approaches with different students. If you can, depending on the age of your students, bringing in sort of audio-visual realia, like literally, especially with the younger students, you physical activity on the other side of the screen, on your side, for example, can snap you out of that mental track, that mental rut which you've gotten into. If you're focusing too much, too intently on a student during a class, and it can be really, really difficult because in a class environment, as counterintuitive as it sounds, you can have distractions. The teacher can walk around. You can have a bit of a break while the students have a small group activity. You can literally hand them a task which they will complete for the next few minutes, allowing you to take a breather. Now you don't have that. Now you've got the students' full attention potentially for an hour.
Or more.
If not 90
Hour and a
minutes.
half, yeah.
So you've got to add variety. And what I've found challenging, but I would certainly recommend experimenting with it, is to have breaks. Literally direct the student to an audio piece, to a video piece. You break up the lesson, giving yourself a few minutes of a break, giving the student a break from having to focus on you as the teacher for a non-stop 60 minutes.
Yeah.
And it almost, as teachers, doesn't feel right because you feel that you need to be there for the full 60 minutes because they're paying for your, right?
I
Right?
feel the same.
And yet you could direct them to a video for 5 minutes and let them come back to you.
Yeah, and they're happy to do, like, they don't want to also be, like, focusing for 90 minutes. That is something we do address in my course. That's the wonderful thing about especially Zoom. You can literally stream video across a connection, so you can put it on your second monitor.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's great.
Teach me.
Yeah, I'll teach you. It's not that difficult. There's just a few little buttons and a few little tricks you need to do, and you can stream the audio across as well, which is great because, like, literally, like, if you tell like 10 students, all right, I want you to go away and here's a link.
Oh man. Yeah.
And then I want you all to press play at the same time on this YouTube video and watch it, and then we'll come back at the same time. Yeah, that just doesn't work. So there is, I would definitely recommend that, audio, video, and that's another good thing about Zoom. That's why on my course I encourage that teachers use Zoom. You've got what we call breakout rooms, and they are great because you can put people into pairs or groups of 3, and you can send them off for 5 minutes to brainstorm some ideas on specific topics, and then they come back and you share them as a class, and that creates a much more dynamic environment, and you as a teacher can have a 5-minute break and prepare for the next phase of your class. So yeah, there's some tips. I've got many more on my course, so check it out, people. All right.
I think I need to take your course.
Yeah, you need to
because
take my course.
You know, I'm still old school. Like old school, I go with Skype, and when you present me with Zoom, other than join the lesson and exit the lesson, leave. Leave. And I've experienced, obviously, webinars and breakout rooms. But if you said to me right now, just create a breakout room, I would start sweating because I don't know, So it's got very little to do with age, actually. It's got to do with exposure. It's got to do with learning how to do it. And if your course tells us step by step which buttons to press, you only need to learn that once.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you've got everything's recorded. You've got the screen capture recorded, so it's pretty much a step-by-step process. Here you go, click this, click that, and off you go. So it's pretty straightforward. But you need to know, otherwise you're gonna. That's one of the things about learning. Sometimes you may think, oh yeah, I'm doing really well online. I'm doing my Skype classes, but suddenly when someone teaches you all of the other cool things you can do, you're like, oh wait a minute, I didn't realize that I could do that, and now my classes are going to be even more entertaining and much better. So yeah, that's what a lot of the stuff we do cover. A lot of on the course we look at the different skills areas. So like I've broken it down into skills areas. Like how can we make reading interesting and interactive? How can we do listening and make it interesting and interactive? How can we do grammar and make it interesting or interactive, etc., etc.? So I've tried to break it down into the different skills areas because all languages basically, we teach the same skills areas. All right, let's look down at another one, and we're coming to the end now. Technical barriers for teachers, which is a good segue from what we were just talking about because, when you are teaching online, there are going to be technical barriers, and you're going to have to overcome them or learn from your peers and things like that. Otherwise, you will face challenges. I mean, Loic, do you know how to give your students remote support if they're having sound issues?
Remote support if they're having sound issues.
Yeah, I'm sorry to put you on the spot here.
Give me an example.
For example,
put me on the spot. Give me a problem, and then I'll see if I have a solution.
Like
probably
no matter what you tell the student over WhatsApp or voice Skype, they cannot sort out their sound. They can't hear you, or you can't hear them. You're like, please click here, there, and they're like, doesn't work. So something as simple as that.
Restart your Skype.
Yeah, restart your Skype. That's an option. I had to do this through quarantine. It was completely very stressful. But like on my course, I teach you how to gain control, remote access control of your student's computer so that you can fix it for them.
Right.
Which can be very useful because sometimes people don't know how to click something that's very obvious, or they don't know that they should update their drivers, or they're running an old laptop which or they've got different things plugged into it and they don't know how to switch between those devices, so they are a bit lost. And it doesn't matter what you tell them because you can't see their screen, so that can be very frustrating. You can actually request remote access via Zoom. Did you know that?
I'll tell you what, I didn't know that. And if I think back to a session that I had this morning with a coach of mine, because I don't know if students and teachers realize, but we're constantly learning ourselves. We're having to adapt, you know. And so we do screen sharing on Skype, which is pretty straightforward, and I can feel his frustration often when he's saying, no, you've pressed that thing too fast, I didn't even see it, and you've moved on to the next tab on your browser. Yeah. And he wants to just about reach over and click that button for me because I'm clicking either the wrong one, or he's saying, go down, and I'm going down, but now I've gone too far. Or go up, scroll up, but now you've passed it. Yeah. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff where if it is software related or user interface related, if you could remote in, take control of the screen and set it right for them. I mean, that is a great tool. Yeah. That is a great tool, and it's very frustrating as a teacher because this is not teaching. And yet it's become part of your life.
Yeah, it's like technical support. Yeah. So Zoom offers remote control access. Unfortunately, though, you can't control the Zoom features. So you can't control the mic or the camera access and things like that when you're controlling your student's Zoom. You can only control their computer. So that's a little bit annoying too. So I've got other ways which you can access your students' computers and gain access. They have to obviously allow it. But then you can get in there, get into control panel, check the sound. Sometimes like their mic levels, just like their mic was on mute, but their microphone was like muted in the control panel, and they're never going to find that. They're never going to see that. So you have to do it for them. So technical barriers for teachers knowing how to do this stuff. It's like what you just said. Like we're teachers. We're not IT professionals. Yeah. But you need to know that now. Otherwise, you're going to lose customers. They're like, too hard. Didn't work out. Bye. And you'll get used to what are the common issues, and you'll be able to fix them pretty quickly. Okay. So that can be a real challenge for teachers as well. So the technical barriers to stuff. And let's not get started on the technical barriers to developing your own like WordPress website, understanding how to run an LMS, like a learning management system. There's a lot to do. So we do touch on some of that stuff on the course. Obviously, I don't go into full on fully, how
web design.
Web design and how to set up an LMS, because that's a bit beyond the scope of the course. But there are some pretty useful tips there to get you past the more common barriers that many students will face, and you as a teacher should learn. Okay, this is my favorite, and this is what I noticed in quarantine. This is the last point before we wrap things up today. This is what I noticed in quarantine. You suddenly need to, we talk about flipped classrooms, but we also need to talk about flipped methodologies. Like teachers, especially if they've been teaching in a traditional environment for many years, when you move online, suddenly, scary thought, you need to design and think squarely from the position or perspective of the student, which is a little bit weird because normally teachers stand in front of the class and say, listen to me, I'm the boss and I'm going to tell you all these wonderful things and you're going to learn from me because I'm amazing. Yeah. And that, it's complete, the game has changed now. You need to really understand everything from the student's perspective. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to teach them effectively. And that comes down to really simple things like knowing what they are seeing on their screen. So what is the student's perspective from the other side of the Zoom call, or the other side of where are the buttons that they need to press located on their screen? Little things like that, which people often completely are oblivious to. So when they're trying to say, no, you need to do this, and then the teacher's getting frustrated because the students don't understand, but because this teacher doesn't see or doesn't know what they're seeing. And that's a really quite big shift in like paradigm shift for many teachers. So yeah, did you want to add to that?
Well, I remember the first Zoom call that you and I had, which for me was not the first Zoom call I had had, and certainly it was not the first for you. But I'm running 3 sets of audio outputs, so my listening skills have to adjust based on where the sound is coming from, and there are also a number of different input points. So there's a microphone on the computer, there's a microphone in the earphones, there's also a microphone located in the camera itself. And very often you cannot hear the other person. Now you're having to use gestures to give the person an understanding of which buttons they should press. So now we're using sign language on top of English.
Yeah. Great, yeah. And another thing is you need to design material from the perspective of the student. So, you can't just slap up a document on the screen and say, okay, let's just copy this. No, you really need to start thinking about it from their perspective. You need to start really putting yourself in their position, and you need to be able to really walk people through processes. So you need to have a very, very clear idea about what it is that you're doing and what it is that you want to achieve, which often, and no offense to teachers, sometimes teachers like, I've been teaching for years, I'll just do this, or, it'll be fun. Like really very minimal amounts of planning. And that is a recipe for disaster, because the students, you haven't got them there in front of you. It's not obvious to you sometimes why they don't understand something, or why they can't achieve what it is that you want them to do, because you're not there with them. You're not looking over their shoulder. So that's really important. And that's all I've really got to think about, to say, and my thoughts from today. I mean, a lot of good information there. But what else would you like to add, Loic?
Just maybe just one thing, and it's really a question. I'm not trying to punt your course intentionally.
You can.
It's what
okay.
it is. Very often, the advice that one receives is what to do. And it's almost easy to know what to do. And so what a course does, from my point of view, for most of us course creators, I also have courses, what it does is you could get this information for free online by checking out a lot of YouTube videos. Having said that, what you've done, is you've repackaged all of that information, drawn out the essential parts of it, curated it, and presented it to your students so they don't have to spend as many hours pretty much as you've had to spend to structure the course. So there's value in that. And the second part where there is value is, instead of focusing on what you need to do, a lot of us know what we need to do. How? And that is where I thought what you were saying earlier was so valuable, because if you are showing us, as a teacher, if you're showing me how to do it, which buttons to press, man, that is a lot of value. That's all I'm saying.
Well, thank you very much, my friend. Yeah, no, but it's true. Having someone walk you through a process step by step makes life a lot easier. Yeah, you could search high and low for the information, but what I said earlier is that a lot of the time people think that that's what's available, or they think that that's what that they're doing a great job, or it's not until someone shows you other perspectives, or someone shows you other tools and other ways of working, that you open up your mind to these things. So even if you think like, I'm doing a great job, you can always improve, you can always do better, and a lot of that improving comes from learning from other people who've got more experience than you. Like, for example, you and I both like mountain biking, no?
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
it. How did I improve my mountain biking? Well, I went with people who were better than me, and they would do crazy downhill sections, and I would be scared. But if they did it, I'd just follow them, and in the end, you build up your confidence and you improve because you're learning from someone who's got more experience than you and who's better in some regards related to that skill area. But yeah, okay. Thank you very much, my friend. I love that you're helping plug my course. I mean, at the end of the day, we're here. We're teachers. We want to help people. We want to make them, improve at whatever it is that they're trying to achieve or what they're trying to improve at. And my motivation for developing this course was to help people be better online teachers. Spent many years doing like online classes, and I've watched the evolution of technology, and I've watched the evolution of teaching styles, and basically I've just put it into a course because I think it's very useful for people, especially now. If you've been teaching in a classroom environment and you're really a bit lost, or you feel that your online classes are not very dynamic, or you're not really using you're not really sure that you're using all the resources that are available to you. So yeah, that's why I put it there. So thank you very much. Well, that's it, people. That is basically some useful tips on how you can adapt to learning online, to teaching online, and make the transition from a traditional classroom environment. Loic, thank you very much. I'm not sure. Are you going to be here next week, buddy, or are you away on business?
Next week I'm traveling.
Okay, well, I'll be flying solo next week. So everyone, pleasure again as always. Please drop your comments into the comment section. Remember that the course is currently in its launch phase, so you can all grab your copy of the Art of Business English How to Teach Languages online course. You need to go to theartofbusiness.english.com/HTTLO, so how to teach languages online, so that's HTTLO. And there you'll be able to grab your copy at 50% discount, which I'm running for the next 2 weeks. And yeah, after that, it'll be its normal price. But it's a great program, and I'm sure you'll get lots of value out of it, especially if you are a language teacher who wants to move online, or if you are someone who's working and would like to earn, some extra money on the side by doing like 2 hours of work a day. I was actually doing the numbers last night. Imagine if you were doing 5 or 10 hours if you're doing 10 hours of extra work a week, which would be about 2 hours a day, and you're charging $25 an hour, that's $250 a week, which is at the end of the month $1,000 extra, which would be pretty helpful.
It's also money.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty helpful just for doing, a couple of hours of a day. You could do an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, and that would be in between your normal job. So I thought, yeah, there you go. You could start your side project as well. So it is exciting times in the online learning space. Well, thank you very much, Loic. I'll see you in the coming weeks. I hope you have a nice trip. And
thank you.
To everyone else, thanks for joining us. It's a pleasure as always. Take care.
Bye for now.
Bye, guys. Bye for now.